We're back. Welcome to Print Your Games, the podcast about what's new and awesome in the world of 3D printing for gamers. I'm one of your hosts, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param, and I'm joined by
Kristen Soward's also known as Lost Spheres.
Kristen. Today's topic after the preamble is going to be the question, what will it take to get 3D printers mainstream? What does this technology still need? What advances need to be made? And what printers are already getting us very close to that? But before we jump into the main topic, let's talk about what you've been printing. What have you been working on, Kristen?
I have started a new army / faction for my role-playing games. My setting I wrote, City 7 Saris, has this faction called the Eternal Dawning. They focus on a virtue, and they focus on the point where they slowly morph into a divine state as they become more and more like D&D or Pathfinder. As your energy becomes more divinely attuned to a thing, you become connected to it in a lot of the mythologies they present.
Right.
Similarly, this manifests. They have like a communal vibe where each of them kind of takes on a certain color, and so it's kind of like they turn into these kind of like rainbow angel things. Or other different types of manifestations of these colors. So it's going to be an incredibly colorful project, which makes me super stoked that we got those speed paints and everything from last week. I'm actually getting to experiment now, mixing contrast, speed paint, intensity inks, all that stuff, and it's been really neat so far. But I got super into it, and I already have 20 of them started and none of them finished. So hopefully next week I'll have better pictures of them. And I've got some other traits. I've also done some of my first really hack job collisions to fuse things to bases, because some really cool flying figs. I'm just gonna quickly throw out there, please, for the love, if you're listening to this and you're a mini creator and you do dynamic bases, that's great. I love you. But something that fits on the table, or at least on a game square, like Raging Heroes, Arc Villain, love their minis, but either A, they're on these gossamer ribbons where you have to have 5 or 6 inch wide base to carry all those ribbons under this medium or large size figure, for a lot of the games we play. And then you spiral out. If you want to take that off, she or he, whatever the fig is, it's not going to work anymore. And so that's really frustrating to me. But I did some hack job fusing into some bases that seems to have worked for the first bit. One of the things I like about Raging, I said Raging Heroes, I mean Heroes Infinite's their Patreon, but you can get stuff that's medium troop size stuff, and they're really good about that. And so there's some really cool stuff there. And I know Titan Forge and Arc Villain both have more angels coming, so it's this big celestial themed army. Celestials, paladins, knights sort of stuff. It's going to be super cool and very, very colorful, hopefully. Hopefully I can make enough metallic elements that kind of join the whole look when you look at it on the table together. But I'm super stoked. How about you? What are you doing?
I am continuing the march through necromancy and have worked on. I finally printed that zombie horde I've been putting together, and nice. I have started the long process of painting it. But I'm actually pretty proud of the paint jobs I've been doing on these zombies. You can definitely see the Dana Howell influence. It's loud and strong on them. So first, the set I ended up settling on. It's actually a very wonderful zombie set that has just enough zombie without too much gore to make my stomach churn while I'm intimately working the paintbrush inside their innards.
Cute.
Yeah,
you don't your big Nurgle guts slide out of them.
Really, because I'm going to be spending hours and hours and hours staring at these things, and I don't want their brain half hanging out. So I went with the Highlands miniatures zombie set, and Highlands I love because they do very old world style models that are kind of arted up with more realistic proportions. They definitely lean more towards true scale models than they don't do a whole lot of heroic scale. You don't have oversized heads, hands, feet on their models. They're usually more closer to true scale, and also they have a kind of restrained, more realistic medieval or Renaissance era clothing than some of the more fantastical stuff that exists at the time. So their knights don't have a billion skulls and rosaries hanging from them, and etc.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a nice distinct style that I enjoy. So I got their zombies. I printed out like 40 of them, and no, 40 of them per print plate, and I ran 2 plates. And so I've got 80 zombies now, and
Wow, that's a lot.
yeah, I don't think I'll paint all 80 of them right yet. I am going to paint at least 48 of them, which is enough for me to use them in Kings of War as 2 zombie hordes or as 2 double regiments in Age of Fantasy, as so a
Nice.
group of 20 and then a group of 28. So for the paint job, I leaned real heavy into the speed paints because, oh my gosh, do I need to paint a whole bunch of these? And I do not want to spend forever painting zombies.
The net
So there's
effect's really, really good. It reminds me of like some of the good batch paints I've seen for Zombicide board games.
oh nice.
You like some of the better ones. I really like it, and then I still love the fact that you've got that sneaky underglow in there. And for people who are listening to this, he does this kind of a misty blue glow, and it creates an eerie feeling. Again, without probably being too gory. And then you can just throw them together if you needed to. Even in like a TTRPG encounter, they would still look very cohesive. I just think it's such a slick trick to do. I love it.
Yeah, and Ninjon put out a video that was very helpful for this job. I did not use any of his techniques. I tried some of his techniques and ended up just using my own techniques. But he did a video a few months ago called "I Paint 120 Zombies in a Day," and I am not that ambitious.
Yeah,
but one of the tricks he did use is, so I got my color palette out that I was going to use for the zombies. So all the zombies are using pallid flesh for the skin. So it's this like really bright lime green flesh, which kind of like makes them look like they're glowing, and I kind of dig it. And when you add that blue green bright blue green underglow, like I said, the Dana Howell effect, it basically looks like I have this constant gradient of blue green to lime green across the entire zombie, and then the clothes kind of fill in the detail. But for the clothing, because I have so many of them, so I basically poured some browns, some leathers, some reds, just in my palette. And then I would just, and like he did, and like Ninjon did in his video, I did the same thing, but instead of using oil paints, I'm using speed paints, where I would just put my brush in a color. So this is the red batch. So I would grab a zombie, find something on it and paint it red, grab the next zombie, find something else on it and paint it red, so that I distributed the colors across all the zombies without painting them all identical. So even when I have 2 zombies that are literally the same model pose, so I did do the mirror trick, so half the zombies are mirrored of each other. So like the zombie up front with his hands, he's just like wearing a vest and some trousers and his hands out. It's like some of them, that vest is red, some of them that vest is dark brown, some of them that vest is hunter green. And that's because I've just randomly grab paint, put it somewhere on the zombie, grab next zombie, put that same color somewhere else on that zombie, repeat until all the zombies are painted. And so far I've painted 27 of the zombies. I've got some of them up on screen right now, and those the first 6. That was the test batch, and here's a full regiment of zombies all lined up, and they really look cool when you line them up. I like seeing models lined up and ranked.
I of course want them all displayed across a battlefield. I was gonna say, if you keep that rotation up good, it's really cool too, because if you're, again, I always think of things using for TTRPG, Dungeons and Dragons, whatever, and I can be like, oh, I want to attack blue vest guy or green vest guy. So it just becomes that extra little bit you need to be like, I want to attack red vest zombie, and your players or people are whatever. It just gives you so much easy built-in targeting, and again, you don't have to break the immersion by putting numbers or whatever out there, which I'm of course obsessed with immersion. So.
Yeah, and it super helps. Also, my goal is to replace all of my pre-painted models, my pre-painted WizKids and WotC models with models I've painted myself. So I'm
not quite there yet, but every time I put them out and mix them more and more as I get better and up my game and get more printed minis that are really just amazing. I
Mhm.
feel bad when I see like somebody like he's playing the standard, first gen cleric from Paizo's or whatever WizKids line, and it's
Mhm.
batch painted in a factory or whatever, and you're suddenly like, oh wow, that looks so sad comparatively. Like,
Mm.
but
Yeah. And speaking of well painted, I got to hang out with Crystal Frazier, the
mhm.
author, the other day. We got together to do some painting sessions. So I was painting my zombies, and to take a break, I painted one of my werewolves. And I decided to put my money where my mouth is on this one and just go to town to try to paint the best darn blue awoo I could.
So this was just
And
one mini for such. Oh gosh, the abs,
yeah,
the abs for
yeah.
days,
It
Baron.
helps when I get to paint abs. Like when I get to just
Yeah.
sit there and focus on getting the perfect abs, I always get a good model out of it.
Well, and there's just a lot of
So
texture going on with the hair and everything. It's great.
yeah. So
So
what I
go ahead.
did with this model, this is a printed werewolf from the vampire set that Cast and Play put out a couple of I guess almost a year ago now for
Mhm.
last Halloween, basically. So October. This was their October set. And I just really loved this werewolf. It comes in a couple of poses, and it just like really characterful. And it's a large size mini, so it's on a 40mm base, and it's got this like cool posed howling pose. And Cast and Play, they've got this very animated, like
Mhm.
almost cartoony expression in their art style. So I did not want to do this werewolf standard. I did not want to do this dog boy and Injustice. So I did what I suggested the other day, which is I pulled out the speed paints, but just as the base coat. So
Mhm.
because speed paints have that really thin consistency and they are designed to go down in one coat and cover, it actually makes base coating super fast, even when I knew I intended to cover most of this back up with layer paint afterwards.
Mhm.
So I got my Cloudburst blue for the fur instead of gray or brown or something like that, or black. I was like, blue fur. This is going to be a blue werewolf. And
Okay.
so I put Cloudburst blue across this, which was super dark. It's kind of like a Prussian blue. It's like very dark blue. The shadows on that are almost black. And then some wildwood for the trousers, and I think dark wood for the fur,
Uh-huh.
and that just get my base coats down. And then from there, I grabbed Pro Acryl, mixed it with some thinning medium,
So good.
uh, which is I'm using the Midwinter Minis recipe for the thinning medium, so it's like acrylic matte medium mixed with 50-50 with water and a couple of drops of dish soap in it to act as a surfactant, to a flow improver, make a flow improver.
Yep.
And using that instead of water lets you thin the paint down and let it keep its consistency, and it flows better without breaking down. Not that you have to do that too much with Pro Acryl. Pro Acryl is just like magic in a
Oh,
bottle
it's so
anyway.
buttery. I love it.
Yeah. So I just started layering. So after I got that basic base coat down, I just got out my fine, Winsor Newton Series 7 brush and just started putting layer after layer of brighter and brighter blues across those abs and the fur and the eyes. And like the abs are like grab the attention, but my favorite part was the face, just like tracing the muscle lines and the facial features of this like howling werewolf was where I really think I got it best down. And then, of course, grab that misty blue that all my undead models have and put it over top of that. And the end result was, because base coating is like, if you ask any artist what's their least favorite part of painting minis, it's base coating, because it's boring. It's putting down solid blocks of color that takes a lot of your time across a big model, and the speed paints make that an incredibly enjoyable experience because it goes
Yeah,
down
yeah.
fast and you only
And,
need
and
one
it
coat.
and it picks out details that you might have missed. So I love it. I
Mhm,
love it. You
mhm.
totally
Yeah,
get that. I have two
yeah.
questions for you.
Yo.
Did you have any
Mhm,
reactivation issues where it muddled the
mhm.
paint?
No.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So did you have to give it a long dry time, or was that just like just a few minutes sort of thing? How'd that work?
I gave it like a minute to dry between layers,
Hmm.
so not a big
So
deal.
I was fast working
Yeah.
back in there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and I was gonna ask another thing. Oh, and then I
Mhm,
had a total random thought. That could be
mhm.
your musician. He could be howling. Sorry.
I'm not putting this in with the zombies. He has his own squad of werewolves to lead into
Okay.
battle. Yeah.
You segregate all your people at your param. I just don't know how I feel about it. Big, come on, werewolf bard in the middle of your zombie horde. Oh, okay. He's got some buddies. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. He comes in a few poses, which I really like. And so, like, this one's got snarl. And I don't know if I'm going to paint that as just drool or blood. So I'm halfway torn on each on that one.
Yeah, see, because for drool, I'd probably want to use like some of that goo that John uses, that dries clear and hangs. But blood, you could get a pretty nice glossy blood on that.
And I also had a small, like a skill I haven't had to flex in a while, where I had dropped one of my copies of him and broke his fingernails off. So I had to get the milliput out and sculpt new claws. Which
on the one you painted?
No.
Or a different one?
He's next in line.
I gotcha. Yeah. One of my angels suffered a breakage similarly. I had to rebuild their spear.
Oh no. Yeah, and I should have just printed off a new one, but I was just like, it's claws, and I haven't done anything in milliput in a while. Let's get a skill up.
I totally respect you painting that werewolf so well, but the same thing, if you're doing squads, I just get to the point where it's like, okay, there's 6 of these guys. Like, how much time do I really want to put into them when I could be, generating another set or moving on to a different thing. So, but I understand the practice for sure. I definitely, there's a meditation painting just one thing.
Good news is, because base coating normally takes so much of your time, and the speed paints eat that base coating time up in a fraction of the time, that it didn't take me as long as this would have taken if I would have traditionally base coated it with 2 coats, then coats of just normal layering paint, and then worked my way up on the shadows. So even then, I think I only spent 2 hours on this werewolf. So he's got a squad of 5.
That's what I was going to ask you. Was he a zenithal?
Yeah, I did zenithal. Okay. I did zenithal. Okay. And I do thin my acrylics down so that there's transparent even over top of that. Of course, by the 5th layer of teal, that's not really there.
I mean, that was a much more classic look to the mini with it being painted up in layers like that. I wouldn't have thought you necessarily even used speed paint on it the way it looks at the end. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the speed paint really is just base coat and to help me, see the details. And then from then on, it was just like manual highlighting all the way up. No dry brushing except for the glow, because that's just how I do that glow. I could have done that glow with an airbrush, but I guess that's even more cheating than dry brush. Not that there's any cheating at all.
Though, I don't know. Like for me, like I'm still a noob with airbrushing, so disclaimer. But sometimes I just like get too excited and pop that thing up, and then it's just boom. It's like all your hard work on there is gone if you just go a little too hard on it, and then suddenly you've got this big, misty glob, and that would be a sad Panda moment for me.
And this is a good time to transition to our main topic, which is really user-friendly 3D printers. And the reason this topic's come up is there's been a couple of 3D printers that have just hit the market in rapid succession that are focused on the consumer level market. So like this is within the reach of the hobbyist. They are definitely on the pricier side of within the reach. These are not your sub $100, $200 printers. But they have very user-friendly focused features. And one is an Fdm printer by Anchor, who is new to the 3D printing space. This is their first offering, and they are coming out swinging. Anchor is a very popular electronics brand. I think probably the most that they're known for here in the States is wireless chargers, accessories, and batteries and stuff that they do are in the high end or mid to high end market in that stuff. They're very reliable and reputable brand. So that's not your traditional low end electronics company. And they are going with the Anchor Make Ilm 5 3D printer. That the feature set on this printer is just impressive. It's a $500 asking to get into it, and I'm going to go ahead and throw it up on screen here.
Please do.
Yeah, so it's a $500 ask.
Filled with regret looking at this, but we'll talk about that one more time.
They're doing a Kickstarter campaign right now for the first run, but there are demo units already in the wild that they have sent to Linus Tech Tips and all the 3D printing people. Like, oh, Jesse's gotten a hit copy of one, Tested's gotten a copy of one. So like they are proud of this printer. They are not afraid of it. It's not quote unquote fully assembled, but it's only in 2 parts. So and all the parts are pre-built. So it's literally just put print bed down, put gantry into top of print bed, plug in USB-C cable instead of like little wire jacks and yellow and ketchup and mustard cables and stuff like that. It was the typical stuff. Like everything is polished. Everything looks like consumer grade, a consumer grade piece of electronics here. This thing, like, you do not manually level this bed. The bed, it has built-in touch-based leveling sensor on a 48-point grid. And they also claim that because they've tuned this printer so well, it will print 5 times faster than your standard Ender 3.
Wow.
And from the test we've been seeing from the people who have early versions of this printer, it lives up to that. It lives
incredible.
up to that reputation. But of course, this is pre-production models, not the actual production models out there. It's got an aluminum body. It's a metal construction. It's got a removable build plate. It's got a sensor runout feature. It's got a built-in webcam to monitor and stream your prints. So like you don't even have to add that to it.
Wow, that's amazing too.
Yeah,
normally that's a whole thing that people do.
Nuts. And it's got wireless connectivity and all the fun stuff. Like all the fun toys are on this thing. And it's designed to take a lot of the headache out of what I would say the FDM printer. Because as somebody who's done some FDM printer and have been we've got a question from Christopher Brinside. It can connect directly to a computer. It actually uses I don't know if it's USB-C for that connection, but what I mean is USB-C cables is usually the different modules of a 3D printer will have like these just lead wires connected to what look like power supply plugins or like old school,
even my Mega did
raw
wire plugs.
So like very like cheap looking plugs, whereas that you like have to jack in and you can like see the bare wire inside those things, whereas this just uses braided USB-C cables to connect all this electronics together. So there's a lot less mass, there's a lot less exposure, plus everything's pre-built. It's just a more polished thing, but it will connect directly to a computer via USB. It has wireless connectivity, I think Ethernet as well. It's got all the features. It self levels. You can set it to self level once and keep that information or to level between prints automatically, so you know for sure that it's going to be level when it prints. And that is the most difficult thing about usually keeping a printer going, is just making sure it's all leveled up.
Yeah, especially FDMs like that, for sure.
So, and I've been bragging on the Neptune 2 because of how easy it was to put together. This thing puts it to shame. Like, I don't even have a BL Touch installed on my Neptune to do that leveling stuff, and it's all built in here. And it doesn't use a BL Touch; it actually uses the nozzle head itself to do its leveling. So it's even more accurate than if you had a BL Touch on there. And so it's kind of crazy that these features. It's like I said, it's a $500 printer. It's the Ender 3 size build plates, and it will print fast. And it's just one of the printers on the market these days that it's a new printer. It looks good, and it's focusing on user friendly. So this is a printer I could recommend just about any, like my mom. I could recommend this printer to. She's not technically illiterate, but she's not going to want to change out the bed springs or replace the hot end. She just wants. 3D printers need to be at a place where you just buy the box. You set it up. Setting it up does not involve pulling out a soldering iron and with minimal tools. Like if it's more than an IKEA furniture requires, it's too much.
Yeah, this is the first time that I really saw something that like I could recommend my nephew Benson gets this, and he's still in school, at like high school, I think. Right. He could run that just fine, I'm sure. actually, he's really smart. He probably could figure out all the technical stuff that I avoid too. But someone like that. Actually, my other nephew just got that new Anycubic, and I was so jealous because it was the new fancy thing from Anycubic. But he does TikToks, and he streamed a pretty gnarly fail the other day, and I'm just like, oh man, still like that's still so. I feel like I'm bagging on Anycubic all the time, but it just seems like I see these. It works really well initially, and then suddenly catastrophe, and like I don't know. There's a lot of user maintenance, and if this thing's that slick, that is amazing. Auto leveling alone, I'd pay $100 more for, but it has a built-in camera. That's crazy.
Yeah. I just like that I can just trust that you buy it, take it out of the box, plug it in, and it goes. And that is what 3D printers need to be. I think especially FDM printers, that seem to be the more you need to have the willingness to get in there and tweak and customize. Whereas resin printers are more get up and go. And speaking of resin printers, the other printer I wanted to that have given me the idea for this episode is Creality just released the Hallett 1 Plus, or Halo 1 Plus. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to say that word. So the Halo 1 Plus, it's $400 resin printer, 4K mono, 7.9 inch. So this is your pretty typical mid-size 3D printer, and it has another set, like it's got the built-in feature, the built-in air filters. It's got a customizable menu screen. It will pre-cache your files so that you don't have to leave the USB plugged in. You just load the files into the printer, take the USB out, and it will keep printing it. It's got actual good connectivity with the computer. It's got network connectivity. It's a much better built. They have made the resin printer that they wanted to make more painless than resin printers, and resin printers are already pretty darn painless as it is. But again, it's a resin printer that focused on not upping the specs. Like this is like it's coming in at a premium price. $400 for this size printer is on like a little bit on the high side. It's about double what you could get like a bare bones version of a printer like this. But because it has the built-in filters and that you can change the activated charcoal easily without taking the printer apart. Some of the ones with built-in printers, you have to take the whole chassis apart to do it. Because it has the caching, the menus, the ease of use on everything, they just focused on making a more pleasant experience to use this printer, which means that I'm seeing, which is what brings me to the topic today, which is that I think that the industry has realized that we're reaching where the tech is good enough at what it does. These printers are sharp. They are getting super fast. They are making great models well and consistently. And now it's time to make them easy to use for your average user. And so we've got a group of these machines that have decided to put its money not into better resolutions and faster print sizes and bigger build beds that we've been talking about before, but something that they're less scary to get into. They're easier to run, less room for error, the more dependability, the idea that you can just plug this up and use it. And I do think that that's an important step forward. This is the same sort of technological advancements we saw in every other consumer electronics. So like when even refrigerators were hitting the market, you had these complicated ice boxes and weird mechanical devices, and then they got more user-friendly. Computers, I mean, I've been a computer user since there were consumer level computers. Like it's like a little 1-year-old kid learning how to program BASIC on my dad's lap. They definitely got easier to use. Now everybody has a computer in their pocket that they don't have to worry about. How many people had to adjust the IRQ settings of their iPhone lately? None of y'all. So making these things easier to use for consumers is what is going to grow this industry and get it more out there. If we're going to have Star Trek replicators in all of our homes one day, we have to solve user friendliness. So what currently in the industry in using these in the hobby is in the way? So I think that we'll talk about it in 2 steps. So let's first talk about FDM printers, the ones we've had the longest, the filament printers. What gets in the way of getting them more mainstream accepted. I would say setup of the printers has historically been a problem.
But that is
You get
getting
these,
better. Even my Anycubic was faster, so I think that is something they're working on for sure. But yeah, setup
right,
is burly.
right. I remember it was early kit printers were, you know, you got metal extrusions that you had to thread bolts through and manually tension all the drive belts and plug in all the components, and like the circuit board that runs the computers just sort of hanging out there in midair and it's not even secured to anything. And
Sure.
now we've got and I think that the Anchor is a big step in that direction, where like it's get out the box, plug the top of it in, because you know otherwise it would just be a giant big cube and that's harder to ship. But plug the top of it into the bottom of it, turn it on, go. That's probably as simple as we're going to be able to get. Like that's as simple as putting together an inkjet printer for your computer.
I could see eventually a hinge lock system, but I don't know how well that would work with the tracks, because I imagine that would get the laminate off a lot. So
Mhm.
this may be it. You're right.
Yeah. And auto bed leveling is a big one. Like manually
Huge.
leveling a bed and getting it just right. And just right is right. Like if you're off by like a half of a millimeter, even less than half of a millimeter, you have a failed print. So like
Yeah.
just getting that paper underneath the nozzle, the way we all manually level our beds. I mean, there's a reason BL Touch is just such a godsend to this industry. Having built-in automatic bed leveling, I think, is absolutely key to this, because that is the source of almost all the print problems that most people have using easy to use materials like PLA. Now, when you start to get into like nylon and ABS, that does get to be more challenging. You need, you know, all metal hot ends, higher grade printers, and there's definitely more room for failure there. But for just like getting basic PLA to make cool looking toy that you can give your kid or your nephew or your family as a present, then just automatic bed leveling is absolute key to getting that going.
I think another thing that we'll probably see, especially since you've already got a heating element on it, but okay, wish list C, okay, high
Mhm.
end, high quality, is more care about humidity and filament. Like maybe a
Mhm.
built-in warmer. I've seen a couple heated tubes that
Mhm.
people have rigged up, because everybody makes these
Right.
crazy modifications. But like right now, a lot of people are getting humidity, like a box or whatever, to keep their filament
Mhm.
dry, or
I'm
heaters.
thinking I'm saying that this is more worrystone than reality.
Okay.
Where because we've had things like 3D Printmaker did like a video, Uncle Jesse did a video where they literally soaked filament in water for days and then tried
Mhm.
to print with it. And with PLA, it just worked.
Yeah.
Like I think it's an overblown problem. It definitely, like with nylon for sure, that's like a very moisture sensitive material. But for your basic PLA, I don't think worrying about moisture content in the filament itself is a problem, but
Mhm.
getting bad filament is a problem. So like
And
getting a
maybe
bad
that's the
batch is
thing. Maybe
bad.
that's the thing, because I had that
Hmm.
I probably, well, I can't remember the name, so I can't name names.
Yeah,
Haha.
yeah,
But I had a roll that about halfway
yeah,
through just seemed to start failing over and over
right.
again. And it
Mhm,
was, I was like, oh, it's got to be the bed, because for some reason my bed can get unleveled on a single print.
mhm,
I don't know why. But it
mhm,
wasn't. It was just that everything I tried to print off of it fail, fail,
mhm,
fail. Like to the point where, you know, after I have a single fail, I'm like kind of a little shook up now, and I need to kind
mhm,
of go walk it off. So I am not
mhm,
running my FDM printer nearly as much as I want to
mhm,
right now.
right. But
Any others?
I think that kind of does it for resin like filament printing, because filament printing already doesn't have much of a worry with toxic materials as long as you're using like safer plastics like PLA. It doesn't have post processing is literally just peel the brim off and you're done. Um, and so PLA is very close to being super user friendly. And but I think PLA is the less sexy of the printing options right now, because PLA is still not capable of that insane level of detail that resin printing is capable of. But you can get some cool things like toys and tools and terrain
Terrain,
and
yeah, for sure.
aids and all that sort of fun stuff. PLA is your answer. That's a lot of people would enjoy having access to a PLA printer that just works. Just give it filament, things come out the other end of it if something goes wrong. And they've already gotten filament printers to the point where, like, if the literal power shuts off in your building, it can just resume the print as if nothing ever happened. And that's like, they are very close to being super user friendly. Resin, though, resin has more hurdles to jump over.
I mean, the base is still pretty easy, but the things that suck.
Right. Yeah. So resin printers, the pros, they work right out of the box. A resin printer comes pre-assembled right out of the box. You just put it on your counter. You know, you take the foam off of it. You
peel off some sheets.
Right. You put on your screen protector.
You definitely put on your screen protector.
Yeah. Except the modern resin printers coming with a screen protector pre-installed. That is becoming a thing now. So yay, screen protectors.
And now we can start saying, back in my day, the printer didn't come with screen protectors.
Yes. And that's when, from that moment forward, that's when things get interesting. Because every time I talk about resin printing, when people have a concern or something that's holding them back, it's, well, isn't the resin toxic? How toxic is the resin? So we've got to get past the resin issue. So right now, is resin toxic? Yes. Don't drink your resin. Don't get it in your eyes.
Don't put your eyes.
If you get it on, wear gloves when handling it. If it gets on your bare skin, it is an allergen and an irritant. People will react to that to different severities, and it will build up over time, and you will lose resistance the more if that direct skin contact exposure happens. If you're not in a well-ventilated area, make sure you wear a mask while you're working with the resin, though there are less odor resins with less fumes, and there are filters that are being built into the printers. I just bought some of the just standalone USB powered filters to put in my Saturn, just to have that going on there. So the filters are kind of helping with the fume issue, and there's new resins that have less of the odor fume issues, but you still need to have PEI.
I've noticed it varies from batch to batch too, though, because I like got some Rich Opto. Usually it's very affordable resin, and I got a bunch of it off Amazon. The first few were great. I could barely tell they were even in there. Like, I was stunned how not smelly it was. And then I got my second order of it, and good golly, that was terrible. Like, so chemically.
This is an area where, because of safety issues and toxicity issues, and needing to trust that the safety sheet that comes with your resin is accurate, I'm not really going to ever recommend budget resin to anybody. Reputable brand resin, people, like, this is my opinion, not Kristen's, but like, I want to be able to trust that when it says, you know, these are the toxic issues with this particular resin, that they're accurate. And I don't know that I can trust that with cut rate resin, considering that cut rate filament already gives us problems.
You know, I'm a bargain shopper, and yes, I have suffered for it on occasion. Though occasionally I do get some really good results with it. So
I tell you, I add Tenacious to all my resin. Tenacious real stinky.
Yeah, it is, but not as much as I expected, because you kind of warned me about it. My bottle I'm on right now is not terrible. It's there, but then you know, maybe I'm just desensitized because of all my foul, you know, cheap resin I've been huffing.
Right. So, but it's the actual big safety issues with the resin is drinking it, getting in your eyes, and touching it. And touching it is less than the first two, but you do not want to get this. So you're having to handle this with gloves. So what needs to happen with resin printers is to reducing the amount of direct skin exposure to resin that we can get in order to make this more friendly. And we're seeing some advances in that with some of the higher end marketed towards professional printers. The Form Labs printers specifically, they put together a slew of printers designed for professional office environments where, you know, if you're in any sort of professional environment, you care about liability. And so having safety features built into your printers and stuff is important. Now, these are not cheap printers.
No, they are not.
Start at $3,000 and go up. These are meant for professional environments, but this gives us a sort of preview of the sort of things that are possible to make our lives easier while using these products. So first off, Formlabs resins don't come in bottles that we manually pour into our printers. They are in cartridges that are slotted into the printer. You don't open the bottle. It's already in the printer before you get to resin. So you've not touched it yet.
There's something great there for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, as part of the printing process, it adds the resin that it needs to the vat. It doesn't add a whole bunch of resin to the vat. It just adds what it needs to print.
That's beautiful too.
Yeah. So you will not like waste models. Secondly, the vat itself is self-cleaning. It has like a little scraper thingy, and
it works.
And the FEP is built into the vat itself as a disposable unit. Also, the FEP is much more durable than the FEPs we're used to.
The whole vat's disposable?
Yeah, it's a cartridge that you dispose of when it's time. So you're not cleaning out the vat with alcohol and
just
stuff.
Just seeing that dollar amount spiral. How much is that?
Oh yeah. This is $3,500 for their Mars size printer.
How much is their disposable cartridge?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's more of a Saturn size printer.
Okay.
For $3,500. The resins itself, they go from about what we are used to more expensive depending on what kind of resin. So the resin's not so much the cost here. It's just the printer and the vats. And they go up. Like for their large format Jupiter size printer, it is $11,000. $11,000. And it has similar features. They also have wash and cure machines that are designed like the good wash and cure machines, like the ones that are available for us. But this wash and cure machine, it drains the resin out of the tank before you even take your print out. And you've used and you can set a timer to let it drip off all the excess resin from the print in advance, so there's less exposure there.
Sure.
Then you take it. They have like giant handles well away that never touch resin. So these handles have never touched resin, that you can take it and load it into a wash and cure machine, that it just sinks the whole build volume down into a closed chamber that then washes it and cures it. And then you take it out. So conceivably, I would still wear gloves while handling with this printer, but you at no point in time does your skin ever need to touch anything that has touched resin.
Wow, that's amazing. Does it wet cure? So is it in the liquid?
I have no idea what the inside of that cure chamber is like.
Sorry, we've just been talking about wet curing things lately, so now I'm like obsessed with it a little bit. Mm-hmm. I started to wet cure something today. I'm like, wait, why am I doing this? This is like opaque, and it does. I don't care. It's a squad. I don't care if it's shiny or not or has residue on it. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah. So this is like with cartridges, self-cleaning vats, draining the resin out of the printer after it's done with it. The wash and cure machines that doesn't require us to touch the part until it's completely safe to touch. Those are the sorts of things that we need to start seeing on our printers to get them into the resin printers, to get them in the mainstream for sure. Also filters for days on these printers.
Yeah.
These are as safe to go with as possible, really. I think that there may be even more room for advancements. Like I could see an enclosed printing system that the wash and cure is just built into the printer itself. So then like it literally just spits out a part on a sprue that you just peel off and you're done.
Maybe before we're checking out, we'll get there. Maybe.
Right.
We'll see.
But there's some things you can do. You suggested this. So what can we do today with the consumer level stuff that will make printing easier? So these magical, cool printers exist and cost thousands of dollars that we can't afford as hobbyists. So, hey, maybe if you've got the money, go check out Formlabs. They even have a very cool, they have an SLS printer, which is selective laser sintering, which is a cool 3D printing technique, which does not involve resin. So this is completely safe from top to bottom for people. So what it does is you put a bin full of dust of some material type, and then lasers shoot into the dust at precise points to fuse that dust together. until it makes the 3D part, suspended in the dust, so support material is not even required. It just prints the part in place.
How does it
Then
penetrate
you
the dust?
reach down into the dust
You
and
just pull it out?
your part out. And I've seen these in action. BMW was printing hubcaps with a printer like this at Maker Faire this year.
Wow, that's rad.
Yeah. And for the low price of $18,500, you too can 3D print with plastic dust and lasers.
I mean, I kind of want to. I've got a new life goal, but
with the build volume of a Saturn, by the way.
But if you're trying something a little bit better, a little bit more approachable, I should say, it's certainly not better because resin's always yucky, messy, and still it's plastic suspended monomers, and when they fuse, they can do bad things and hurt and irritate you. But you can get eco resin.
Yeah.
Now, which
it's still toxic. Don't drink it.
Don't drink it. Don't pour it on your pet. But plant-based resins are out there now that are a lot less toxic and can be a little bit easier. My understanding is some of them are also easier to clean up because they solve better. But yeah, you can still have. I've actually used a couple eco resins now because of course they were on sale. That's why I got them. But I will say, don't expect it to be any less stinky for sure. But yeah, I got pretty great crisp prints. I did run into some little bit of issue with brittleness with one of the ones I used. And you can mix them also. So like again,
but the second you add tenacious to it, all that eco-friendliness just dies.
The second you mix it with anything that's not also eco-friendly. I mean, it's all suspended plastic monomers though, so like it's gonna mix wellish as long as you're agitating it and getting it stirred up well. But.
And a lot of the eco-ness is just we made our plastic monitors out of soybeans instead of oil.
Right. Which, sustainability, that might be
it is important. And PLA is made out of sustainable material, so you can print PLA pretty guilt-free.
Yeah. But I will tell you, even still, aside from the occasional flash sale or promotional deal, even on sale, I want to say I looked at some eco from Anycubic today that looked pretty good spec wise. It was $49.99 for 500 milligrams, whatever. And it was, or 500 grams. I'm tired. Anyway, it was $26 on this massive discount, which if you know most resin prices is still twice as expensive by volume as most non-ecos.
Yeah. And I and you still have to practice a lot of the same, all of the same safety precautions that you do.
And it's still going to stink and be messy, but it's so a little better.
Yeah. And then if you want to, like, and the other big thing is, like, even if the resin issue is resolved, the chemicals we have to use to clean them are themselves problematic. So isopropyl alcohol, denatured alcohol, which is my go-to, acetone if you are like really serious about it, and man, acetone is so hard to work with.
I was gonna say, and very good at handling it, because if you can destroy all sorts of stuff with that.
I accidentally put my glove down into acetone because I forgot that it was acetone, and I thought I was working with denatured to pull a part out. And then when I pulled the part out, the glove just melted with it. And I was like, I have to go wash my hands right now.
Yeah. Spooky.
Yeah. So acetone, I don't really recommend working with acetone. It works great. You can't use it with a wash and cure machine because it will eat the wash and cure machine.
Yeah.
But that, I just said the magic words. A wash and cure machine makes everything easier. Recently, I've had several print runs where I've processed like 40 zombies at the same time, where I did not get one drop of resin on my gloves the entire time I was working with the print. Everything from handling the printer and everything got put straight into the wash and cure basket, which immediately went into the isopropyl alcohol, which came out clean, and then taking the support material off. Like, resin did not get on my gloves during the entire print and post process because of washing cure machines. And I think that that is key to getting this accepted long term, is that those have to become standard parts of the kit. In fact, I am ordering a new wash and cure machine.
You just got a good one.
Yes, I just got a good one, and I'm ordering the bigger one, the one made specifically for the Saturn, where the wash and cure are separate stations.
Yeah.
So that I can take the build plate off the Saturn and put the build plate straight into the machine without a basket being involved, and then it will clean the print right there without any touching of resin. So once you get to that level,
does it still suspend upside down? How does that work?
So basically the new the Mercury Plus, or I forget what it's called.
It's new Mercury Plus. It's the new Mercury one, yeah. Plus, I think you're right.
It has in the wash station. It's designed for an area where you can put the entire Saturn build plate into the machine, and it holds it up a little bit in the, like, you submerge it into the liquid, but it holds it there, and it will wash the print while it is still attached to this into the build plate. So you don't put it into a basket. You just put your build plate straight into the machine. It cleans it right there. You've got clean prints.
You could really cut down your exposure to resin that way then.
Yeah. Crap. And then that point, you're just pulling out a clean print. You're good to go from there. You pop it off the build plate, pull the supports off, throw it into the cure chamber to harden the outer layers. Resin exposure massively reduced.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My biggest worry right now is because ever since I started adding tenacious, and I don't know if you've had this problem, like getting things off the plate is now like, it's a workout. Like, if I don't get under that lip, and I know you probably are smart and like do some sort of cool trick, like putting things under your lip, or yeah, of course you are. But yeah, for me right now, like sometimes if I don't do that, it is brutal. And getting those angels off was
I have workout. First, I print with a raft that has a bevel to make it easier to put your scraper under it.
Thing number one.
Yeah. And you can just do that in Slicer. But even when I don't do that, I have a Wham Bam Flex plate on my Saturn, so I can just pull the middle off, flex, minis pop off, straight into the cure chamber. Yeah, it's $40, but it's worth it.
Is it easy to install? Because I'm
yes, but your printer is offline for 2 days because it takes 2 days for that adhesion to cure permanently.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and you have to follow the instructions. You have to sand the build plate. You sand the build plate. You clean the build plate first, then you sand it, and really clean it. This might be where the acetone comes in for the build plate itself. Don't let acetone ever touch this magnet; it will chew through it. But clean the build plate with alcohol, sand it so that it gets good grip. Put the thing on it. Do not touch it for 2 days. Then you're good to print again.
If I were to do that, I'd probably just buy a second build plate, which is something we didn't talk about. Buying a second resin tank can also really make dealing with your resin woes a lot easier. Yeah. It can also make it really bad if you accidentally drop it when you're switching it. But
yeah. So there's that.
I can't take away clumsy though.
Definitely do get the syringes, the large syringes, to empty your resin out instead of trying to do the balance the giant build plate and pour it into the funnel.
Oh no, I'm still doing that.
Disaster. That's a disaster waiting to happen. I've had so many resin accidents at this point. That's just like, do not do as I do. Do as I have learned not to do.
You will have to put your recommended syringes in the show notes.
Absolutely, yeah. So that way you just never have to touch the resin, or at least as little as possible. And always wear gloves. Always wear gloves. And if you don't want to buy disposable gloves, you can get laboratory permanent non-disposable gloves that you just wash off between prints. Like if you want to look real cool, if you want to get your inner Breaking Bad on and just like giant elbow length, like
that still spooks me. Like
gloves,
resin just is sneaky. It's like I've started to notice it's starting to accumulate on the cord of my agitator. That I'd use that little vibrational agitator thing, and I can tell there's some. I'm like, that's not cured. I'm gonna have to like set it out in the sun or something. Let it like get rid of it all because it's getting a little yellow look to it. I'm like, that is from resin. Anyway.
And the final thing is I'm going to include as part of our shout outs. The annoying thing to get with printers is finding the right exposure time for your resin. More and more, this is becoming crowdsourced and easy. Like Lachi software will just has a giant category of resin and printer usages, and like, do you want a vroom or not vroom? What layer heights do you want? And it has those built in. But if you need to tune resin or a custom mix of resin, the cones of calibration have become the best way to do that, in my opinion. And there's a new version of it coming. Basically, it is a very easy to use calibration tool where if this, like it has a side that's meant to print successfully. So it's a series of cones that are connected by supports at different diameters. So it is literally testing, can your printer print with this exposure setting a support that will hold this much weight? And there's a side that is meant to succeed and a side that is meant to fail so that you don't overexpose. So it's like you've got to get, so you basically tune your exposure in half sec. Like it has full instruction manual on their website. Cones of Calibration, Digital Foundry did it. And it is it Digital Foundry? Who did the Cones of Calibration? I have a link to it in my show notes. It
went right to a video, so I had to kill it because I didn't want the video to start playing. My other laptop's hooked up to my gaming room speakers, and that would have been really loud.
Table Flip Foundry put these together. They're support specialists is what they do. And so you've got it right when one side succeeds and all the cones, especially the one cone that is at the end that is marked, this cone printed successfully, and the one next to it failed on the other side of the model. And in its self-cleaning, it has an overhang that's meant to pick up the pancake off the build volume, so you don't have to worry about that.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so it's like it has just a roof overhang that just picks the pancake up off of the build plate, and you're good at the end when it's done printing. So this one fails, this one succeeds. Your printer is calibrated to work with pre-supported models.
Nice. I like it.
So check it out. Table Flip Foundry, Cones of Calibration. That is the other easy way to make printing so much less painful. All right. So we are out of time, Kristen. Anything you want to shout out to before we bounce out of here? No?
Nothing. No, nothing's jumping out at me right now.
Well, then definitely go check out Lost Spheres Publishing, Kristen.
Oh, sure. You can always check that out.
And get your screen protector.
Get your screen protector. We actually already worked that in this episode, though.
Yeah, this is true.
For you, old souls that still have to worry about your screen protectors, because soon apparently it's just going to be done for you.
Well, you have to replace them. Like when the screen protector is when you have a FEP fail, you have to replace the screen protector. So make sure you are printing with one.
You get a new one. Yeah. Keep some on hand. There you go. That's a good tip too. Because if you don't have them on hand, then you have to decide whether or not you really want to keep printing for the day once you go through your FEP. Which I recommend no. Especially by the time when you do your FEP and you take all that time too, then you don't want to mess up your printer if you did it bad.
Right. So if you want to support the show, you can do so by giving us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, giving us a like and subscribe, as well as a comment in the comment section. Those help the algorithm and help those companies know that you want to listen to our podcast and help spread us to more and more people to help us grow. You can find more of us over at the printyourgames.com website. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/printyourgames. We're on Twitter at twitter.com/printyourgames. And until next time, I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
I'm Kristen Sowards, also known as Lost Spheres.
And we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening.